Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is Liz Gray. I am the neighborhood liaison for Oakland, working with Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. I'm going to go around the room here so people can introduce themselves, and then we'll go around the screen. Okay?
Hi, I'm Dave Green. I am the director for the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections.
I'm Zoe Juarez. I am a local resident.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bowen. I'm the Assistant Director of Construction, also with the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections.
Robert Columbus, Demolition Supervisor and Fire and Life Safety Inspection Supervisor with the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections.
Hi everyone, Lindsay from the Mayor's Office. I'm the Neighborhood Engagement Coordinator for Oakland.
Okay. Mary? Mary, you want to introduce yourself? Oh, no, she's unmuted. Okay. Elena, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Elena Zaitov. I live in Oak Cliff.
Morgan?
So I'm Morgan Engel. I'm with the Oakland Community Ambassadors.
Okay. Davon?
Hello, everyone. My name is Davon Brown. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Councilperson Strasburger's office.
Okay, and Bob?
Hi, Councilperson Bob Sharland. I represent Oakland, part of Oakland.
A big part of Oakland. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to email over a link here. And I should have here. Sure, yeah. Okay. Tonight, we're going to be talking about PLI, not so much individual cases, but actually how it functions and how residents and business people can utilize the tools that are available now online. I started doing this work about 10 years ago. And when I first started, I had to go down to Rush Street and one by one request occupancy permits. Okay. And today I can do basically the same work in a matter of minutes. Slowly but surely, we're getting a lot of tools that weren't available before and that residents really need to be taking advantage of. And these are the people, oops, sorry, that know it, okay? Okay, we have Justin Dandoy from the University of Pittsburgh has joined us. And you. So, David, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm gonna attempt to share my screen, which is always fun.
Oh, yes. Technology is our friend until it isn't.
Until it doesn't.
There you are.
Let's see if it'll actually do presentation mode or no. Taking, yes.
There you go.
So I'll keep this brief. Just a quick overview of structure, mission, city vision, and then overview of PLI. So if anyone has questions during it, please feel free to ask. Our structure, we have 3 divisions that correspond pretty directly with the name of our department. So permits represents our construction division, licenses represents our licensing and admin division, and then inspections represents our operations division. Our mission is to provide a better quality of living to residents of the city of Pittsburgh by increasing safety of the built environment. The city's vision for the mayor is everyone feels safe and welcome in an environment where they can live and thrive. PLI's role in the city vision in terms of safety, increasing safety through the permit and code enforcement process, remediating condemned property hazards through city-funded demo, in terms of welcoming, striving for customer service excellence, developing equitable and uniform processes, recruiting and hiring a diverse workforce that is representative of the public we serve. Thrive, develop systems that allow everyone from a homeowner installing a deck to a major developer constructing new high-rise to obtain the permits easier and faster, and then improve the quality of life through the code enforcement process. In terms of the construction division, primary role is design, construction, and occupancy of buildings. So that includes reviewing applications when they come in and then inspecting construction during installation. Alyssa here is the assistant director for that division. There are 56 positions in the budget for that department or that division. In terms of regulations, just a quick overview. A nonprofit organization, the International Code Council, publishes the codes this division enforces. Those codes are adopted through state legislation and published by the Department of Labor and Industry at the state, and then locally, these are amended under Title 10 of the Pittsburgh City Code. Quick overview of permit process. People submit, we review, then we issue a permit, construction proceeds, and then completion. And we can share a version of this for folks so you don't have to take notes, but also outlining the processes and steps for applicant versus PLI. Some FAQs, not all construction requires a permit. Development is also regulated by other agencies, the Department of City Planning within the City of Pittsburgh, and the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, or DOMI. DCP, land use, zoning, DOMI, anything in the right of way. And then Allegheny County Health Department regulates plumbing. Some quick information regarding the performance data for this division last year. So we issued over 11,000 permits, or reviewed over 11,000 permits last year, and then performed over 38,000 inspections, construction, as well as code enforcement for development. Second division, represented by licenses, is the licensing and admin division. They're responsible for administrating business and trade licenses, and then perform our customer service functions, and then our department administrative functions. 29 positions in this budget. Monica Bender is the assistant director for that division. Some FAQs. The application technicians, staff PLI's general phone line, and then there's a one-stop PGH online portal chat that they answer questions for during our normal hours. A valid trade license includes maintaining insurance, and the general contractor license requires a RPP, or renovation, repair, and painting certification. And then lastly, not all PLI records are public. So there are some that are certificates of occupancy, information that's on the building permit, but some are private and will not be released to the public. Those include inspection records, application materials, etc. The regulations for the licensing and admin come from Title 7 of the Pittsburgh City Code. And then some performance data related to some of the functions this division is responsible for. That includes issuing permits. So this shows issued permits from 2017 to 2023. 2023 is the first year we returned to the pre-pandemic level of over 10,000 permits. And then this shows the value of construction related to those permits and a big spike last year, both related to material and construction costs increases, as well as some large scale developments that started last year. Our last division, inspections, currently the assistant director position is vacant. We're working to fill that. Primary role is maintenance of existing property, buildings, and associated systems, responding to 311 complaints, condemning buildings, property, and equipment that is unsafe or unfit for occupancy. And then Rob takes a central role in remediating blight through city-funded demos, and there are 34 positions within that division. And regulations come from ICC again, and the International Property Maintenance Code that's adopted and amended locally under Chapter 1004, Pittsburgh City Code. And then this division is also enforcing provisions of Title VII of our licensing code and Title IX zoning code. And then a quick overview of the code enforcement process. We get a complaint, or we initiate it, we perform an investigation. Is there evidence of a violation? If so, we issue a request for compliance. And then we do that potentially two more times rather. And at the third investigation, if all the violations are not resolved, we issue a criminal complaint, and that process transfers to the magistrate, where they would schedule hearings, and then they would make a determination, guilt, innocence, or whether to continue the case. Some FAQs. Our code enforcement goal is code compliance, safety, not financial penalties or fines. We don't receive any of those, and really at the end of the day, what we want is safety, and only seek those financial penalties for bad actors or people who are non-responsive. We protect property owners' constitutional right by relying on evidence obtained by the inspector's right to entry. So things that are visible from the right of way, visible from the path, front door, or when we are granted access by an owner or tenant. FAQ, sorry, this formatting got a little weird. Condemnation does not transfer ownership to the city, and resolving condemnation does not require demolition in all cases. So condemnation can be something for as simple as not having electrical service or water service. So restoring those can relieve condemnation. And then regardless of any action PLI takes, it's always the private property owner's responsibility to maintain or repair a building. Quick highlights of accomplishments for this division last year: over 53,000 inspections. And in terms of the outcomes there are about a third of the violations are abated before we issue a criminal complaint, and then another 9% are abated after we issue the criminal complaint and before there's a hearing. And then when we collected this data, there were a certain number where court cases were not yet scheduled. And then about 12% proceed to court. I think, and then in terms of resources, our website, the one-stop portal where individuals can apply for licenses, permits, planning applications. Agency Counter has lots of information related to permits, planning application, condemned buildings, code enforcement, and licenses. It's map-based. If you're not familiar with it, I use it often because not everyone can remember an address. And that helps locate things. And then we also have an engaged page related to condemned buildings. It shows locations and then our scores related to those. Those scores are on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being the least hazardous, 4 being the most hazardous. 1, there should be no visible structural issues, 4 being imminent danger where possible life-threatening or serious injury can happen at any time. And some contacts, and then these are also available on this contact page on our website. And I think that's it. So happy to stop talking and answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? I know I do.
I have a question. So I understand that your objective isn't to collect fines, but if the fines are given by the magistrate and actually get collected, does PLI ever see any of that? Since it was your department's man hours that got them to court?
Those fines do not come to PLI.
My understanding is they go to the state from the magistrate's office.
And some of the other complication, depending on the individuals involved, sometimes that may hinder their ability to abate the violations if they have limited resources. So it can be a delicate balance there, but there is definitely a perception that we receive those funds and that there might be an incentive for us to seek financial penalties, which really, we don't ask for those except for extreme cases where we believe the individuals have the resources and or not taking necessary steps and being responsible.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'll ask.
Go for it.
Why is it so difficult to get a hearing listing?
So magistrates' practice related to hearings varies. In some instances, there may be an issue with service where when they send out the information for a hearing to a defendant, that they do not respond to the certified mail that they send out.
No, I understand that. Just, there's been numerous times when I've gone to court for a hearing that was scheduled and they don't show. That can be expected, but I've also gone to court where there was a hearing that wasn't on any list that I have because I received the spreadsheet, but I also checked the judicial docket sheet with the state. And out of left field, I'll have somebody come in, which we've experienced with certain major problems in Oakland, and we weren't prepared for them. And in many cases, the people that have been found the complaints, they weren't aware of it because I wasn't aware of it.
Yep. So those are instances where we may also not be aware of it. The communication between us and the magisterial court system is not always the best. So we have done our best to coordinate with them. In some instances, their means of updating us is not the most timely. Some magisterial courts do not use email. So
Whether to laugh or cry at that one.
yeah,
So
we have been working hard to try to get as timely of information as possible, but we struggle similarly. There are instances where our inspectors are in court and for cases and then become aware at that hearing or that day that there are additional cases. So looking to work with head of the courts as well as each individual magistrate to strengthen those relationships and that communication. But it is definitely a real issue.
it is because it's kind of, you have this whole process, the 311, we get all that information, and then you get this going to court. And that's it. And, I have literally, I go through the spreadsheet on Sunday night, I send it out to the community groups on Monday, but then I have to check the docket thing every night before tomorrow, which tomorrow, technically, we had 7 cases for tomorrow. Well, now we're down to 4, according to the docket. So I have to get a hold of those other people that were interested in these cases and say, hey, it's not happening tomorrow, and hope that it doesn't happen in reality. It's just, you know, in a day and age like this, the information, if it could be, you know, posted just on, I mean, one stop and agency counter, great. But it's just getting to this like closed door. It's very, very frustrating for the residents. And then, you know, it gets, quite honestly, it gives the impression that nothing's happening.
I can understand that,
Yeah.
and I share your frustration, and we're working as much as we can to minimize that and to make that communication with the court system more timely and clearer so that we can be prepared as well as share that information with the public.
When the inspectors receive their listing for court, do they go in and update the different cases? Or
So that information is coming into our office, and our administrative staff are updating each of those case files and entering the court hearing information. And that is updating to-do lists for the inspectors so that they know that they have hearing. It's not the individual inspectors who are updating those.
but they receive each individual inspector receives the information. There's no way to flow it further, because isn't that their operation systems? Aren't they the same as the one that actually give you the data that's going into one stop into agency counter?
So the information regarding the hearing dates come in various formats from each of the magistrates. And that is how we are obtaining that is through our admin staff, and they are updating those records. And sometimes faxes, sometimes emails. Yes, we still get faxes. And sometimes, quite frankly, it appears we're not being notified or unsure of how they notified us, because again, we're having similar experiences where either cases were scheduled or cases we are unaware of occur while the inspector is there for other cases.
Particularly in Oakland, we have so many residents that are really involved. I mean, the group down from Oakland Square, they are passionate about some of the cases we have going on down there. And it's really difficult for them not to be kept in the loop. And it kind of, you're losing some back support, which is a shame. But I understand it's a lot of systems. And as soon as you said you're still using faxes, again, that's a little bit scary.
We try not to, but we can't make another agency change their means of communication.
Why? Why? If it's the city, isn't it a city agency?
No, the court is a separate entity unto itself, so we can request that they use certain forms of communication, but ultimately it is within their purview to select how and when they communicate.
So if they want to send smoke signals, that's okay. Very much.
They have to send it in writing, and whether they choose to do that via mail, fax, or email is up to them, and unfortunately, the standards are not uniform across the magisterial system. I'm not gonna argue otherwise.
Yeah. It's a
Linda,
shame.
there's a comment for the corrected.
Okay, thank you for. Where did she go? Mary. Mary, you have a comment? Mary, are you hearing me?
It seems like maybe her mic isn't working.
Yeah, it's unmuted. Mary, we're not hearing you at all. I'm gonna mute your mic and then unmute it again, okay? Okay, try unmuting the mic now. Okay, Mary, can you put your question into the chat, please?
Do you guys mind if I ask a few questions in the meantime?
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Devon.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Director Green, I have a few questions. I guess they're mostly historical based. So right now, what is the capacity for any kind of after hour inspections? And is this something that used to occur? I'm just curious.
And when you say after hour, are you talking about code enforcement?
Yes.
Or, okay, so, we have, historically had some minor amount of off-hour inspections, we still do. When we do that, it increases our operating costs because we're paying, staff overtime, and then may also need to, often will need to include some supervision of that. So those resources are relatively, are not expansive, versus the construction side where there's a customer, we can charge an additional fee, to perform that service. So, those are available, and we do try to, use those and spread those across the city, so that there is some, reach, for those, needed services when it occurs. So some examples are, related to nuisance properties in particular. We may coordinate efforts with, public safety, in those instances.
Okay, one of the problems we're running into in Oakland is our landlords know you don't come out on weekends. I've watched people take roofs off a building. I watched a house on Ward Street put on a third floor with no permits. This last week, one of your inspectors was out and as a result of a fire, only to find out the husband had done the electrical work. Okay, and this happens particularly during the summer. It's wild what's going on. I've seen people gut houses. They have, they'll have a general permit, building permit. But they're, I'm watching dumpsters with pipes and flues and everything else coming out of buildings. They go into the dumpster and they're gone by Monday morning. And your hands are kind of tied because of the system.
Well,
is there anybody that we can call that?
Well, I guess the other is, just for comparables, like during the daytime, we're not patrolling necessarily and looking particularly for construction violations. Where we do catch some of that, but most of that is coming through 311 complaints. So,
oh, I know.
So,
do a lot
like, if it's related to construction activity, I don't know. It's a different way of performing that code enforcement than we do, and I'm not sure overall well, it definitely occurs, the volume and rate of that, and then our ability to be successful in observing it while it occurs.
Well, if I'm observing it and I'm attending all the court hearings, is it allowable to use somebody else's evidence if I am the person that takes pictures, submits the pictures?
So generally, we rely on our own
I understand,
observation.
yeah.
So I think it is something we are looking at. It is having regular inspection capacity outside of our normal hours is relatively complex, because if it's happening regularly, we also have to have supervision of that staff, and then coverage. The city's pretty big, and for it to be effective, again, to do it during the daytime, you saw the numbers of people and our number of supervisors. So it is a really good question, something that we are looking at. I will say right now, it is relatively limited, but we do try to address, particularly for the, Devon, I think you might be referring to more potentially maintenance issues, but I'm not sure, or, activity that's unrelated to construction. I'm not sure where your question was coming from. I don't want to assume.
Two is, well, Mary, yeah, she typed in her comments and she was having trouble with the mic.
She's trying to get in again.
Oh, she is, okay.
Sorry. to interrupt.
No, thank you. Yeah. Leave me alone.
Yeah, go.
What makes the 311 system so successful is the being anonymous most of the time with all in their anonymity. As far as taking pictures and using them as evidence, the only way we can use somebody else's pictures as evidence in court is if that person you get the picture will be willing to show up and testify.
Well, that's what she just said.
That's what I
Yeah,
did.
and as a general rule of thumb, most enforcement agencies do not rely on evidence obtained by other people just because of the whole process. If we were to, it gets more and more complex because if we say we get the magistrate determines guilty, if that's appealed, that can go to someone appeals, and that creates a whole other series of legal proceedings where that individual then we would have to rely on that individual there, and it could theoretically, if it got appealed there or guilty there, they could take it to the next level. So on a practical basis, try to minimize that as much as possible so that we at least have some evidence on our end of a violation and only use other people's evidence as supporting ours.
So what you're saying is when somebody is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, they will only have a problem if they do it during work hours. But if they do it during non-work hours, they get away with it. That's exactly what you said.
I would say that even if they did it during work hours, so people observe things during the day and they submit it to 311, and we would have.
Later, somebody comes out.
It may not be as long as 4 days, but it's going to be at least another day or so before it gets on the inspectors to do this and they're going out. There is absolutely an impact on if they're, whether it can be observed based on a right to entry. And then there are also, not only are there issues of individuals showing up to court, it's also how was that evidence obtained, and whether that creates a constitutional issue in terms of where was the photo taken from, et cetera. It can get pretty complex pretty quickly. And I also understand the public and your frustration. We live in the same city. I see similar things happening in my neighborhood, and understand how frustrating that can be. And I think generally speaking, there are signs that we can see when there are extensive renovations. If it's happening on the weekend, generally, we can observe and obtain evidence of that work. Understand that that's not always going to be successful.
Can you speak a little also about the on-call system for extreme instances where something is unsafe? Not necessarily in terms of unpermitted work, but in terms of how the building may be damaged or unsafe.
We do have staff that can respond to emergencies and support emergency services, so EMS, police, fire, if there's an event to evaluate the safety of the building. So anytime, there's fire or collapse or EMS is there and they have concerns about safety, we can have someone assess and determine whether we need to take immediate action, such as vacate structure, or, start an emergency demolition, but that is, a very small and narrow, focus, that we, but something that we do on a regular basis, across service work. So,
Okay, Elena Zaisoff has a question.
Yeah, as this is going to be an ongoing problem in Oakland with our owners, what will it take to get weekend inspections?
so.
Problem's
it
not
is-
gonna go away in Oakland.
Yeah.
And it's not limited to Oakland, and it is something that we are looking at, and I don't have an answer tonight, but it's an ongoing issue, and again, it is complex. If anytime we're going to provide regular services, it's not just one person. So if we're doing that, we're going to have multiple staff, so that there's redundancy. We also have to have supervision. So it is it's not as simple as one individual happening and then also for it to be effective. So we have to look at what do we need operationally to do that effectively, and then what are the operational expenses related to that so that we can do that. So it is on our radar and something we're looking at, but I can't, it's not something that is easily definable and easily implementable. So it is something that we are looking at as a team and how we could do that in a fashion that would be effective.
What is the possibility of having like a trial period of 2 months? Because again, I've been doing this for 10 years. I can tell you the months that this is happening. In Oakland, Squirrel Hill, Shady Side, Greenfield, South Side. You know, it is, once the students are out, okay, that's when they start doing this work. And sadly, I can also probably give you a pretty good list of who's doing it, because it is the same offenders over and over again. You know, that's a lot of what we see is we send in 311s and they get a notice and they ignore the first notice and they second notice. And then on the third notice, right before they go to court, they clean it up. Like all we had to put up with Zulema down here, those houses that were wrecked on Bates Street. They would never do anything. The day before the court hearing, they would clean it up. So when the inspector came out, it was cleaned up. So the case was dismissed. Right? But then 2 weeks later, I'm putting in more 311 tickets. There's a house on the docket tomorrow that I'm sure Cody King is sick of seeing me about this one house, number of 311s. And it's not talking about just 1 year. I'm talking when I can go back 4 years worth of images and documentation and say, this landlord, once his students move out, he cares less. He doesn't cut the lawn. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. And right before school starts up again, then the lawn is cut. And in the meantime, the residents are living with this stuff.
For the second example, we are getting ready to launch the residential rental unit permit program. And as that goes into effect, that hopefully will address some of those things, because we'll have the standard maintenance issue, but if it's also residential rental, we can enforce, they'll need to have a permit. That permit would include inspections of the interior as well, and have another pathway in to improve the maintenance standards for that type of use. And while I don't live in Oakland anymore, I did, and I went to school. There is a pretty large concentration of rental property, so when that goes into effect, I would hope that has a pretty significant impact, and it would also hopefully help students to understand that if there are rental properties that don't have a permit, that they might consider
Oh,
not
I'm sure they know.
that they might not rent to those.
But I read the draft proposal on rental registration. Am I right in saying that weed and debris are not included in that permitting process?
So, yeah, we haven't released the draft inspection checklist. We are, those standards will be per the International Property Maintenance Code. So those are the same ones that we're doing code enforcement on now. And it will include some exterior provisions. We want to focus a little more on the interior, obviously, because absent that program, we're not getting entry, but it will include exterior provisions because that impacts the safety for the occupants.
When do you plan on releasing the checklist, and also when are you planning on releasing the fee list? Because in the press release, it distinctly says, third draft down, that you can look at the fees, but the only fees that are in there are with the delay payment and.
Sorry, we will be updating the fees that are posted on PLI's webpage are the ones that we're currently using and based on the programs. The city has a fee schedule that's inclusive, and include those, but because we haven't launched the rental program yet, they aren't on our current version on our website. We will update that and have that info, and we should have the inspection checklist posted soon.
Will people be able to go to the city and find out if, say, the house 2 doors down has been inspected? Is there gonna be a sticker like County Health puts a little nice green sticker?
We are working on those issues, should be able to verify which properties have a permit. And there's some things that we need to review with law department to ensure that we don't create more issues, because we want to focus, there's been a long legal battle here. We want to make sure that we have a successful launch so that we can start it and then make an impact and then look to revise things as we go.
Okay, so the Engage page is still the best place for, this is where I've been sending people, is to the Engage page.
There is a page on our PLI's website. I will forward that to you. And it's probably what you're thinking of. It has a link for the draft. It has a form where you can leave
Sorry, I'm
comment.
getting my zoning confused with my rental registration.
We'll get updated info related to the fees, and then we're working on the inspection checklist so that folks can take a look at that as well.
When you were listing the different agencies, you said about plumbing going with the county. And that is probably one of the biggest concerns with rentals in Central Oakland in particular. South Oakland, because of the older buildings. And there's no way, like, I had a resident call me and say, yeah, you know, they've just taken all these pipes and everything out and they're dumping them in the front yard, and there's a sink out there now and there's a toilet out there now. There's no way to check with the county if they actually have a permit. Is that?
I think one of the many hats I wear, I'm a representative for the city of Pittsburgh on the county's plumbing advisory board. It's my understanding the county is in the process of updating to a new permit program for them. I don't know whether or not that will include public facing information related to permits or not, but there's a possibility there, and something I can reach out to them to find out whether they plan to do so or not. Again, I can make recommendations and request, the county is their own entity.
No, I understand that. Oh, demolition permits. Okay, and you're talking about buildings being condemned and the highest level is unfit for habitation?
Highest is imminent danger.
Imminent danger,
Yeah.
okay. But we've got a couple of properties that are unfit for habitation And there are people living in there.
So, if you see that, please,
311.
311 and say, observe, occupancy of condemned structure observed, so that we're aware of that. Typically, we are condemning it, and then we're also saying occupancy is prohibited, if it's also not secured, so people, unauthorized individuals are accessing it, we can cite the owner to, secure the structure, and then in some instances, then have DPW, forward the structure if the, property owner fails to.
Well, in a lot of these cases, they're dead-end properties.
Yeah.
Okay. At one point, there was discussion of, I don't know, intentional attack upon dead-end properties. Because surprisingly, in Oakland, where properties are, their money, we have a surprising amount of dead-end properties. I have one on Fraser Street that has an oak tree that has grown through the middle of it, through the roof, and is now taller than the house.
Hmm.
And it's been dead end for what, 2 decades? But it's sharing a party wall with the house next door. So is this something that, we put in about the graffiti and the trash and the overgrown weeds, and it keeps going back to a clean and lean, and it's just this cycle. Is there anything that residents can do to either help break the cycle, or is there another avenue of approach?
In terms of, I guess, what is the community's perspective on an ideal outcome, or sometimes it varies by neighborhood, so, in this instance, is it looking to find someone to take on the property and return it to?
It's a tear. The one I'm specifically talking about in South Oakland, that's a tear down. There's no way you can't rehab. But there are a couple that, yes, you can rehab, but then we do have one right on Forbes Avenue. The first thing that people see when they come into Oakland is this terrible brown house that the city bought.
Well, we didn't buy, we obtained it because,
That's not what the owner told me.
yeah, so we don't go out and buy property.
That doesn't
We-
surprise me.
Yeah, we end up, owning property because they're tax delinquent, and it's also not solely the city of Pittsburgh, it's owned by 3 entities, city of Pittsburgh, school district, and the county. But I think, I guess, one, for structures where, it's demolition, I'd say that's also complex, the budget for that, is not, does not match necessarily the perceived need, in terms of the volume of condemned properties that are in a condition where it may be appropriate to demolish, so, roughly 1,700 to 1,800 condemned properties across the city, approximately 200, or about 10 to 15% of those are, scored 3 or 4, not necessarily every 3 or 4 needs to be demolished. But that, average cost of demo can range from $50,000 to $75,000. If it's attached, it increases it. For example, there were 2 emergency demolitions that we initiated in Uptown. And that those combined, were about $450,000. Our initial budget for this year for city funded demos was $2 million. Additional, ARPA funding was added, so we're around 4 million. So, depending on which ones we do and the condition, that we have huge potential demand and not necessarily, a ton of supply in terms of meeting that need.
Well, is there something, oh, sorry.
And Liz, you're describing a home in Oakland, one thing, in this general area, which is a very lucrative neighborhood. And as you look at a home and say, that's too far gone. There are plenty of contractors or developers that would say we would absolutely take that on. Now, if it's tax delinquent, there are programs set up through the city that they're going to reassume that property and hopefully get it in one of their payments, such as the URA bank or.
Well, in this one specific case, it is tax delinquent. It has been abandoned. Well, the people are dead. They
Yeah.
both died. And the relatives are not talking to each other. So it's just sitting there. If a contractor wants to take this on, I mean, it's a great location. Anywhere in Oakland, quite honestly, is a good location.
Well, it's privately owned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can tell you afterwards.
Yeah.
It's hard to miss. It's a really big oak tree.
And I mean, the city, as far as I know, has not explored this, but community groups could potentially conservatorship process to,
We've done that with some properties.
Yeah. obviously, your resources are also limited, but this issue, I mean, it's been going on since the collapse of the steel industry in the 80s, and it's not necessarily getting any better, or going to get immediately better.
And my last question is, sorry. What is a multi-suite occupancy permit? What is that exactly?
That is, I believe that's a designation of a type of use under the zoning code, and it's a distinction between various multi-unit residential, or I should say residential, multi-units in a building and multi-suite has to do, I think, with whether or not there are provisions for cooking within each of the units, but I don't want to misspeak. We can follow up with our colleagues at city planning and clarify those, but generally the distinctions, as I understand it, depend on the provisions in each of the units. And multi-suite, I believe, either have shared or they do not include provisions for cooking.
So what would be, what we're running into, another case is where 1 week they're talking, oh, it's multi-suite, and next week it's a fraternity.
Yeah.
And it's,
So both of those are generally going to be very technical in nature, particularly under the zoning code. So that would be, I don't want to give inaccurate information. So while we provide or code enforcement for city planning, in terms of those distinctions, a good point of contact would be the zoning administrator, Corey Lehman, and Will Gregory, who's the senior planner or manager for that, or you can also use, there's a general shared email for zoning staff, and I can follow up and share that with you. But I wouldn't, generally, if we're getting those type of questions, we're going to be deferring to Corey and to understand what those distinctions are before we proceed, and past experience involving fraternities or get pretty complex. And you may
Yeah, I'm
be
realizing
referencing
that.
one that I've done.
North Oakland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably the one I'm thinking of.
Okay. Does anybody else? Oh, Elena. Yeah, Elena. Elena?
Yes, I have two questions. First, let's go back to the demolitions. Will you explain the rating system used? Because the properties on a list have a rating to them. So who is rating them and what does it depend on?
So want to clarify the rating system. The rating system is intended to provide a relative understanding of the hazard, understanding to the public of the relative hazard of a condemned structure. It does not have necessarily a direct link to demolition, city-funded demolitions. We use it as one of the things we consider, and it's on a range of 1 to 4. And one is where it's unfit or unsafe, but there is no clear visible structural issues. Two, there is some observable structural issue, and possibly dangerous. Three, it's both some visible structural issue and dangerous. And then three, imminent danger, and that's a term under the property maintenance code. That means that serious injury, death, or life-threatening injury can occur at any time. In terms of our demolitions, enacting that, we need to direct someone to demolish it. And that's a standard that is slightly different than those 1 to 4, and it deals with it being unreasonable to repair the structure. So they have some comparables, but it's not a straightforward process. And when we are directing a private owner to demolish it, that is one of the extreme measures we can take as an agency, and we treat that very circumspectly. It's emergency power. We don't want to take that lightly, as well as, generally speaking, we want to hold private owners accountable to take care of their property, and do not want to be the sole entity that has to deal with this. But when we do, we step in as a last resort. And as I spoke to earlier, the funding is relatively limited, and we have to deal with catastrophic events, as well as things that we can plan for and bid out on a less immediate basis.
Okay, thanks. My other question goes back to rental registry. As an Oakland resident, I've been waiting for it for years. So what legal and then administrative steps have to happen to get it implemented?
So for the legislation to be effective, we need to transmit rules to council and for those to be published. Right now, we have draft rules for public comment. Public comment extends until the end of this month. And then we are going to take the next 60 days to review those public comments, finalize the rules, and publish them. So we have indicated that we will publish them no sooner than December 1st. And once we publish those, it becomes effective, and people can apply, and we would start, as they go through the process, inspecting, and then we would also start enforcing related to requiring permit. The draft rules give a period of time between when legislation is effective and before people need a permit, because it's going to take people time to get through that permit process and get inspections.
So if there aren't any appeals, like it would be a go?
So there are challenges filed. They until it becomes effective, relatively moot. So once we become effective, it's possible that an injunction could be filed. We are prepared for that. We feel strongly that the version that of the legislation that passed is narrowly tailored and avoids the issues that were challenged and found unconstitutional in the previous version. So we are prepared, PLI as well as the city's law department, to respond to that if and when that occurs.
And in a perfect world, what's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario, we publish and we proceed. There's no challenge.
I mean, timeline to, okay, you have to register.
Timeline for best case scenario of someone to apply for the permit and then get it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
So ideally, we're requiring, the legislation says you require a certificate of occupancy. So ideally, someone has all the paperwork they need, they submit it to us, we process it, and they request an inspection, after the permit's issued, and, we perform it, and there are no problems. So I think on a practical front, submission and getting through that, I would say is not going to be instantaneous, so hopefully, minimally, probably a month potentially for all those steps, if it went smoothly. Maybe a little bit more if they're missing things or there are non-compliance, when we perform our inspections.
What I really meant was the best case scenario for you to be able to take those applications.
When do you think the program will come into effect?
It would be December 1st, or earliest would be December 1st. It may, that may shift a little bit depending on some logistics, but that would be the first time someone would be able to go on the one-stop, apply for it, and start the process. So would anticipate that would initiate in December.
Okay, is there any plan to like target specific areas to get this moving, like Oakland, that's probably 85% rentals? And my second question is, we have a lot of single-family residences that were never required to have an occupancy permit because they were in
And
RA1.
yeah, the legislation requires a certificate unless it is exempt by the zoning code or the building code. So single-family dwellings are not required under either regulation. So would need to provide those, and then there may be other scenarios where they may not need a certificate. So preparing to handle those in the process and provide guidance.
Okay, Bob had to leave and he's looking forward to seeing everybody in the morning at Housing Court for 23 Oakland Square.
I've never heard of that address.
Oh, do I have pictures for you?
Yeah, I'm joking.
Yes, who would miss the bathtub?
It's about permitting. It's actually two questions, and I don't know enough about it, but I know my husband is a contractor, and he doesn't do a whole lot of work in the city, but he said you used to be able to go downtown, go to a desk, get some paperwork, get it signed, go to the next desk, whatever, and you get it done. He goes, now, and I'm tired of hearing him complain when he goes online, because it's nothing's working, and it's difficult. And I don't know what the plan, but you said it's supposed to be easier, you said something earlier. And then the second thing is that the people who try to do it the right way and try to get the permits, they get, the short end of the stick. They're, you know, people are doing whatever they want, you know, they're putting on rooms or other additions on the weekends, they get away with it, but then you try to get the permit and they torture you. And there's something wrong with that, with people who are trying to do it the right way are screwed every step of the way. And there's, you know, like why? There was the one house that they were, I don't know, somebody had come to look and they just shut the door. The house on Parkview, where they were doing work.
They shut the door on the inspector.
Did they get in trouble for that? I'm thinking I'd end up being hauled off to jail.
No.
But they shut the door, they kept working.
So we don't haul anyone off to jail. But
That's
in terms of the question related to permits, we are looking forward to moving into new offices at 412 Boulevard of the Allies. It used to be the old apartment school building downtown. That's
You
come,
didn't pass your own permits from what I understand.
but
Wasn't there a problem with your own permits?
no, any delays were related to the same things everyone else is struggling with. Like, so costs increased,
I heard something about permits.
no, more cost-related issues and the fact that anytime there is a change for a capital project like that, and,
What does that have to do with what I'm asking?
well, you asked. So, about being able to come in. So currently, we do not, where our offices are not open to the public.
So you're gonna open it up, you're gonna open them up again,
Yeah.
is what you're saying?
Yeah. when we
So
do-
this, what's done online is a temporary thing?
No, it'll be there.
But you could do both?
You can do both.
Oh, okay.
So right now, limited to online only.
Okay.
We will be in the not distant future, in 412, Boulevard of the Allies, and it'll be, a vast improvement to our old offices. We will have modern space, and we will have all three development agency present, so someone from Dummy, someone from PLI, someone from city planning will be there, and we can walk people through the process if needed, and or who prefer in-person services. So that is coming. We do recognize that concern, that impact folks. We are also working generally to coordinate the streamlined process. So one of the big steps forward that came about in June, we launched a new permit program that incorporates the zoning application and a PLI building permit, and it includes reviews from zoning. So looking to streamline the process, remove needed expertise, trying to use common plain language, and make it so that the responsibility of the applicant is really to define what we're doing. When we tell you whether you need drawings, what we need to do. And we're collectively trying to make the process as seamless as we can. Regulations are always going to be there. Our role is to share our expertise in those regulations so that you and other customers understand what's needed, and then we can support you through the process. I can't say it's going to be easiest. We're going to try to make it as easy as possible and support you. In those who
What about the people who are going through the process and they end up getting hung up, and somebody who's not going through the process who does whatever gets away with it? And
we have a code enforcement process. Ultimately, that's what we're going to rely on. On our end, I would say, while the permit process is not the most straightforward, what it ensures is that they're safe, and that it also meets zoning regulations, which ensures all, compatible uses and other things. And ultimately ends up with a better, safer development, and the ones that serve the system, use code enforcement process.
But only if they script the system during work hours, yeah, not the weekends.
Or if we are notified about it.
I think a lot of the residents are having frustration because a lot of times when these things do end up in magistrate's court, they're like, okay, now you know you've done wrong, go get your permit, all is forgiven, dismissed. To residents to live with that, because they are the ones that have places that are making walls out of bathtub and refrigerator doors. And they are, they're taking their time to go to court only to have the things get dismissed. And that causes a lot of frustration for them.
I think some of the things that the public doesn't see is the process isn't necessarily easy for those individuals. So for example, if they end up going through the permit process, what may have only been regulated through inspections, they may now need to engage design professional and have a design professional evaluate what happened versus someone who comes in, applies for it appropriately, they're working with the inspector, they're going through it. If they do it without permits, they're going to be exposing work, they're going to be held to a different set of standards because we didn't have inspections from the get-go. So while they may have obtained a permit, that permit process was nowhere comparable to what would happen if you start from before you start development. It's always going to be harder if you come in after the fact.
Can I make one suggestion? I love the little guys down below in the round circle with a hand or something on one stop.
Yeah, the check.
Those guys are great.
Yeah, that's what the app text.
But nobody, I keep telling people, you gotta look for this little circle down on the left. Move that up.
Okay.
Because, and make it, you know, if you don't understand, click here, something, because I think that would help a lot. I'll be honest with you, I'm older than all of you, okay? And there are days that I just sit here, oh my God, okay, now, it's just very, very frustrating. And technology is changing so fast and everything. I have landlords that are using flip phones. They don't text, they don't do email, they probably do faxes, you know? And they've told me point blank, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna go down there and get a permit. I can't do this. I can't figure this out. And I've offered to help them, you know, and it's very, very frustrating. But if they have the offer of help at the top, tucked away in the corner, it's really, and that is such a great asset for you guys. Because they answer human being questions. Not like Mikey Chat or my favorite, the Amazon chat person, which is an AI from some province somewhere or another. You know, but they really do, and they speak with you, and I'm always like, by the time I'm done, like, great job, thank you so much, you just helped me and everything, and it just makes people's lives easier. But you really need to promote that more.
Okay, thank you. Always happy to hear positive feedback, and I would say that staff goes above and beyond, and
I think I did a 311 saying that they were. Oh, yeah, that was the other thing, one last thing, which drives me crazy. I have an account with 311 because over the years I've submitted quite a few. And a lot of times I'll see it just gets closed. And I'll go back to the property and go, well, that 2-foot tall grass doesn't look like it's cut. How did this get closed? And then I have to put it back in again and I have to start over from scratch. Can you add like comments underneath the closed?
So there should be, I'll have to check on what comes through back through the 311 system. If you go to agency counter, it should show a comment from the inspector why they closed the case file. I don't know if it comes back through the 311 system. I can check on that, and that's being updated currently.
Yeah, because it is very, you know, it's just like it's closed and no reason is given. Not even, in many cases, yet no violation is found, and I'll just scratch my head and go back and take another picture and file it again. But, you know, just no information at all and not having the ability to say, well, why?
Yep. And we have shared email addresses for supervisors, so in those instances where you feel a violation may have been that our action on the case file was inappropriate, you can reach out to those supervisors and give the address and give the 311 number or the case file, and they can take a look at it. And it's very typical inquiry, and hopefully can provide some additional insight. It may not necessarily always make you happy. Generally, it may be right to entry, and we may not be able to observe. If it's grass, obviously we should be able to observe.
Yeah, or 5 cars parked in somebody's front lawn, which happens at like 5:30. So again, it's back to Zoe's point, a lot of things, but okay, we are way past our time. It is 7:20. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you very, very much. We will be sharing the video online at OBDC Let's Talk page. If anybody else has any other questions, and Lane, I see your hand again. Elena.
Yes. Yeah, this is just a comment, that on the agency counter, the link that you have at the bottom to the Allegheny County Real Estate Portal doesn't work. It says this site can't be reached, and that's been for probably 6 months, 8 months. So
Okay.
just please
Okay.
get that fixed. That's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good night, everybody.
See you.